Hey, my name's Daniel Gefen, and welcome to the 5 Minute Bark podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to stand out in a noisy world and how to have persistence so that you can get anything you want.
Okay, so we're live here on the 5 Minute Bark. In fact, we've got a guest here today from Israel. We've got Daniel Gefen on our show here today, and he was recommended by one by the other, but Mr. Jeremy Slate himself, who's offered many guests to our show here, and I'm very thankful for that. And we just sat down and had a little discussion before we went on live here today, and I was telling Daniel that my problem here is I interview a lot of podcasters, and I'm just not getting to the meats and bones with these people. So our goal today is to give you the best interview you ever heard of a podcaster interviewing a podcaster here today, and he's committed, and I'm committed to make this really fun and inspirational for you guys out there. So Daniel, say hello to everybody. Tell them a little bit about who you are, your podcast, your life.
Hey, everybody! What do you want to know? What do you want to know, Dennis?
Well, they're shooting questions through the air right now through Trent. Tell us about the show.
I am a father. Okay, I'll give you a little bit of background. So I'm a husband to a beautiful wife for 10 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. We managed to get through the hump, the many humps along the way. I'm a father to four beautiful children. I'm very blessed. I have a company in the UK that I built 8 years ago that runs itself right now. I have a podcast show called Can I Pick Your Brain? And we just launched a new company called getfeatured.com, which basically helps people get featured on podcast shows.
And so tell me about Pick Your Brain. I mean, this must be fun to, I mean, as a interviewer, it must be fun to just try to just find, that's kind of like what I try to do in my shows, is try to pick their brain, trying to get something really, really awesome out of these people. What is the most awesomeness you picked out of somebody's brain?
Oh, wow. There's so much brain picking that I've done.
There's got to be something that stands out.
Yeah. You know what stands out to me? And I thought about this recently. I've had a number of guests recently who the success that they've had has come because they were not afraid to ask. They were not afraid to just take that step forward. And so many people listening to this or watching this, let me ask you a question. How many podcast shows have you listened to last year? Okay. Now, how many have you produced? How many videos have you watched on YouTube? Inspirational videos. Okay. In the last year, how many have you watched? How many videos have you watched on Facebook? How many on YouTube? Okay. How many have you produced? How many books have you read? And how many have you produced? And you know what the answer that most people are going to say? They've watched many, many videos. They've read many books. They've listened to tons of podcast shows. They've been to, seminars and webinars. But how many have you produced? 0. And you know what the difference between you and Tony Robbins is? Because everybody's loving Tony Robbins, and I love Tony Robbins too. But here's the thing: when you're standing in the back seats over there, and you're kind of watching Tony on stage, ask yourself this question, because I asked myself this question: why are you in the audience, and why is Tony on stage? And you know what the answer to that question is? It's not because Tony is smarter. It's not because he's 6 foot whatever, okay? It's not because he's more, he has more resources or money. It's nothing to do with it. You know the difference between him and you is that he is on stage and you are not. That's it. And so if I'm not doing something, it's because I'm not doing it. I started my podcast show because I wanted to interview people. I wanted to get in front of a mic. And you know what? That first episode, I was shaking like a leaf, like my hands were shaking and my voice was cracking and I was messing up and I had to re-record the damn thing 17 times. But damn, I got it in the end. And I've done now over 65 episodes. I've had 50,000 downloads. And I've been named the top 26 podcast shows in 2017. Now, I'm not saying that because I've got a massive ego, although I do and I need to work on that. But I'm saying it because it's crazy to look back after you've done it. And there's nothing special about me. There's nothing different about me than you watching this or listening to this, other than the fact that I just did it. And that's it.
It's funny you say that. Oh no, I like that. I like that. But it's funny you say that because I went, I was a professional athlete and I traveled the world and I've been to the UK quite a few times, actually featured. I'm actually featured more in UK than the United States. But one of the things I would exactly say to myself is I'm not going to be on the couch watching a football game when I can be somebody doing it. I wasn't that couch potato. I was out there doing what I did. And that's what really brought me to being one of the top in my sport. So I totally feel that right now. And it's just, you're right. And the funny thing is when you are doing it, whether it's awful or excellent, you feel so good. The adrenaline that happens after you've done it. And I remember recording my first 5-minute Bark podcast and I'm sitting, I remember it's right over there. And I'm like, who in the world is going to listen to this? Because, you're recording and you're just going to put it out there and like, okay, well, who's going to find this thing, And you don't know who the first listeners are, but you just do it and like, that was so awesome. Why did I wait so long? And it's funny because last week, I've been really trying to do some face-to-face sales, and it took me 20 minutes to open a door to go into an office. I kept on going to the door and going back, going to the door and going back. And I said, Dennis, walk in the place. And I just kept on walking, and I didn't want to walk. I just kept on walking and walking and walking, and then finally walked in the door. And I got turned down, of course, but but it just took away all that. And it's just an exciting feeling of achievement.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people they want to know how to grow their business. They want to know. I hear this all the time from entrepreneurs. How do I, social media? How do I grow my social media? How do I? The thing is stop doing what everybody else is doing, right? Everybody is doing social media and everybody's doing, Facebook ads and everybody's doing, blogging and whatever it is. But how many people are picking up the phone and actually calling people, right? How many people? So one of the things I started doing as well, just because I'm trying to stand out from the crowd as much as I can. And so one very simple way and one very easy way is, Dennis, what happens on your birthday on Facebook? What happens, right?
Everybody sends you a happy birthday thing. I send everybody a FaceTime.
Yeah, that's it, right? So you've got it. So you switch on your computer or your phone, right? And it's your birthday and you just get bombarded, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday. Nobody stands out because everybody's doing the same thing. It's lazy, right? But what I do is like you, I just simply record a video message. I just go to their profile and I'll hit video and I'll just be like, hey, Dennis, happy birthday. I really hope you have a wonderful day. Hope you have an incredible year and I hope to see you soon. That's it.
Yep.
And the amount of times I get a response, wow, Daniel, thank you so much for that video, right? Because nobody else is doing it.
It's a simple thing, right? It's actually easier than typing it.
It's crazy. It takes 20 seconds of your time. So, instead of taking, maybe 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you take that extra 10 seconds, but it makes all the difference. And you go from just being just another person, just another text, just another message to becoming remarkable.
So this is something that's really interesting here. We're kind of now talking about standing out from the crowd, right? How do we stand out from the crowd? What are some other? Obviously you've been very successful in your businesses, right? Businesses and in a relationship for that matter. 4 kids, is that what you said? 4 kids, yeah. And
that's all thanks to my wife.
Well, she really loves you. So
clearly,
yeah. So everybody's trying to grow their business, obviously increase sales, increase profits. And you're right. They need some different things out there to create the uniqueness. And they're looking to social media. They're looking to different things. And we talked about what's probably the most pivotal thing that you've done to make your podcast be in the top 25? Because that's not an easy task. I know. Believe me, I know. Obviously there's some creativity.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a few things.
And
Number
I
one
might
is...
I might steal your idea, so you better watch out. So.
Okay, Dennis. The more the merrier. And I think you've got an incredible show, and I think you deserve to be in the top, whatever podcast shows in the year for sure. You get my vote. But just to give you some examples. So number one is when I used to write the titles for the show, I would sit down and I would think about, what's the most catchy title? What's the best title? And sometimes I'd come up with the winner, like straight off the bat, like boom. And one day I think it was about 6 months ago, there were two titles that were both of them were just so good. And I thought, oh man, which one should I go with? Because it's all about the title, right? Once you've got the right title, then you get people clicking on it and then they start listening. And then I had an idea. I thought, why don't I just ask people, like just go on Facebook and type in the two possibilities and see what people say, like ask them to vote. And so I went on Facebook and I just simply wrote, which title is best? A, B, and then I added a third one just for the sake of it, C. And the amount of people that started engaging, going, oh, I love B. B is the best. Definitely go for B. And then someone else is like, no, C is better, but maybe B. And then another guy's like, yeah, B for sure. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't. And then the craziest thing of all is I've done this where I thought, let's say A was like definitely the winner, but now I do it religiously. Even if I think that I've got a winner, I'll still do it because every single show I want to see what people think. And there are so many times where I have thought A is going to be a clear winner, and actually C was the winner. Everybody loved C. So basically, stop being a psychic. Like, stop trying to guess what everybody wants and just ask people. And do you know what's amazing as well is so many people have said to me, Daniel, do you know what I love about your show? I feel like I'm involved in it. I feel like I'm a part of it because I picked the title, right? You're getting people invested in what you're doing. And so instead of you being this, business owner and kind of like this faceless business, you invite everybody else into your business, and suddenly you start getting ambassadors for your business, and that's powerful.
That is awesome advice, and it's so true. I'm in marketing, and I always tell my clients to ask their customers why they came in the door, and they will not ask them. They will not ask them. They will not ask why did you come to my website? Where did you come from? And it's so important because they're the answers, right? They came there on something. And it didn't happen on accident. It really didn't. Mm-hmm. It was a word phrase. It was a picture. It was a Google search. What search was it? It was all these different things. And you're right. That's probably the best advice you could give people is titles number one, or for sure. Like this 3 seconds.
There's two other examples. Yeah. Two other examples. One is that I'll also get people just before I do a show. I will, about a couple of hours before the show, I will let people know who I'm interviewing, and then I'll give them an opportunity to ask questions like, hey guys, if you comment below and ask me questions, I'll ask them in the show. And so literally that's what happens. People are like, oh, ask him this. Oh, ask him that. So, I interviewed the smartest man alive. I interviewed the leading, FBI hostage negotiator. I've interviewed Jay Abrahams. I've interviewed, Yannick Silva. So I'm giving people not just, they just listen and whatever comes out, and whatever questions I think I should ask, but I'm giving now the listeners, the audience, an opportunity to get involved and actually ask the questions they want to ask. And again, they become a partner in the business because now they're involved in it. And then just quickly, a third thing I do is I created a Facebook group called Can I Pick Your Brain, where anybody who listens to my show, they can come into the group and be a member of the group. And what I do is I always invite all of my guests into the group. So I'll have all of these big names in the group, and I'll invite people to ask them questions. So I'll say, if you want to pick, Jay Abrams' brain, just go to the group and ask away. And so It's just so powerful, and people love it.
I'd love it. That's awesome. And the group just keeps growing and growing and growing. And then, of course, at any point in time you come out a course or anything like that, then now you have that know, like, and trust with them, of course, too, as well.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Yeah,
very powerful.
sure.
So why did you land in, changing a subject here, why did you land in Israel?
Well, so I grew up in England, in the UK, and I just found it very depressing, the weather and the kind of like, just didn't like the weather so much. And then I ended up meeting my wife, who's from California, and I got very lucky with that. And so we got married and we ended up living in California for 2 years. I was on a 6-figure salary. I was 23 years old. And then I hit the 2008 hit me on the head, and we went bust. And so I ended up getting a knock on my door one day from the landlady, Olga. Her name was Olga, and she was this big, towering woman, Russian lady. And she goes, "Mr. Gefen." I don't know if that's a good Russian accent, but whatever. And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "You need to leave." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you haven't paid the rent in 2 months, and you're being evicted." And I said, "But I have a wife and I have a child. Like, how can you?" And she said, "It's not my problem." And so I ended up basically getting kicked out. We had to move into my in-laws, which was not the best idea for the marriage. We were almost divorced after just 3 weeks of living with the in-laws. And, for those of you watching this or listening, like, just as an entrepreneur, it's like there's nothing worse than not being in control, not being able to provide for my wife and my child. It's like someone stabbed me and just, there's like this hole in me that I just can't fill. And now I'm relying on my parents-in-law, who they gave me their daughter, for me to take care of and to provide for, and I can't. And it's so painful. And, it was probably the most painful part, in my life. And so I ended up calling up my father and basically asking him to bail me out. And so he gave me a job. So I moved back to the UK with my wife and child. And my father owns this like grocery store where they serve like milk and eggs and stuff like that. And so if you can imagine, like, I was on a 6-figure salary, living in a Spanish townhouse, driving a brand new, beautiful car with an office on the 10th floor overlooking the Hollywood sign, living the dream. And now here I am back in England with my tail between my legs, working as a cashier in a grocery store. And every single day I dragged myself to that store because I had to provide for my family, and I just needed to do it, but I hated every moment of it because I was still not in control. Like, I was getting a paycheck to pay my bills, but I just felt I was just trapped. Like when I was in school, I felt the same way. I felt trapped. I didn't want to be there. And so here I was again in that kind of situation where I felt trapped. And so after a year, I literally gave up. And I said to my wife, I said, "Honey, if I have to go back and serve milk and eggs to one more person, I think I'm going to take a shotgun and just shoot everyone and then shoot myself." And so she said to me, "Honey, I'm supportive of you. I'm behind you. Go start a business. I believe in you." And so that's when I started my business, and I built up the company, and there was trials and tribulations, and there was a whole lot of craziness. There's no such thing as an overnight success. It took me a couple of years to even get profitable, and actually the biggest thing that happened was I ended up outsourcing my company to one of my competitors because I just felt like I wasn't growing the business, and the only way to grow was to basically take myself out of the business. Like, to remove myself from the business and just work on the business and build the business from the outside in rather than the inside out. That was a very pivotal moment for me. And because I was able to outsource the whole thing, I then pretty much was able to work from anywhere. I can work from my laptop, my phone. And so one day I was driving in the street, and an idea came to me. Like, it was pouring with rain, the clouds were very gray, and I said, what if I move to Israel, where it's sunny most of the year, and I'm running the business from wherever I want. So I said to my wife, hey, let's move to Israel. And she said, sure, honey. And so now you know how amazing she is, right? And so here we are. We're living in Israel. And I basically spend about an hour a week on the business. So it's pretty amazing.
And it pays the bills and makes things happen for you, right?
Pays the bills, makes things happen. And allows me to do what I love. Yeah.
And coming back to California, well, that's a little tougher, a little more expensive here.
Yeah, and also, you know what, we're Jewish as well, so Israel's kind of like where a lot of Jews are, and so my wife has family here as well, like her grandmother, grandfather. So that was another good incentive.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends that just recently went out there, and they didn't want to leave. It's so beautiful. They really enjoyed
beautiful place.
It is beautiful.
Yeah,
awesome. So you've definitely been through a lot of trials and tribulations in your life, and certainly held strong. It's funny you say, you hit rock bottom and your dad bailed you out with his grocery store. My dad bailed me out starting this show, and he owns a grocery store too. A small little grocery store.
Oh way!
Yeah. So
how interesting.
It's really interesting. It's like, this sounds like me. So, although I didn't get hit in 2008, I got just hit by a bad decision. I had a company that was pretty much. I worked 5 hours a week and made six figures, and just made some bad decisions. That I was thinking of other things and just didn't keep my eye on the ball, so to speak. Learned lessons, but I don't give up. Just as we don't give up, and somehow we both end up in podcasting. And why podcasting? Why did you end up in podcasting? I mean, this is like outside the box.
Before we get on to that, I kind of want to touch on something you just said, which is persistence. Yeah. That's absolutely huge. Because for me, I think one of the things that I would say is why I'm successful, quote unquote successful, is due to my persistence. So I just want to share with you kind of one example, one story. When I was running my first company, at the beginning, like, there was no SEO, there was no Facebook, there was no, all that stuff. And I was just cold calling, and I would pick up the phone and I would just call people randomly. And most, obviously, like 99%, you're going to get no, rejection. And I had this one philosophy, which was, unless someone tells me to go jump in a lake, they're not interested, I'm still going to call you. And so there was this one guy called Gary who I called every single day for about 6 days straight. Because he didn't say no, right? He said, well, I'll think about it. To me, that's a yes. Like, you know. So on the sixth day, I call him up and he said, Daniel, enough. Like, why are you calling me again? I told you I would think about it. And he went on for about 20 minutes. Like, basically preaching to me about the difference between a good salesperson and someone who's desperate and someone who's, harassing. And at the end of the 20-minute rant, he then goes, anyway, Daniel, I'm sending you the form. Happy to sign up. Thank you very much. And he hangs up the phone. So I'm laughing because I'm thinking, oh, okay, there we go. We got a new client. Wonderful. It worked. But the story gets better. About an hour later, my phone rings and it's Gary again. And I'm thinking, oh man, no, not him again. He's probably going to cancel, or he's going to give me some, another, telling off for whatever reason. And he picks up the phone. He goes, Daniel, it's Gary. I don't know if you know what I do, but I recently sold my recruitment agency for 300 million pounds, which is about $500 million, right? Yeah. And, I'm a venture capitalist, and I look to invest in people more than I do in businesses. So I don't know your numbers and your business, but I do know a good investment when I see one, and you are very investable, and I'd like to invest in you and your business. Can we meet up? And I'm thinking, geez, this is the guy who was lecturing me about being too persistent, and now he's wanting to invest in me because of my persistency. And in the end, it didn't work out because he wanted 70% of my company, which I wasn't willing to give up, thankfully. But that just goes to show the power of persistency is you just don't give up. Just keep going for it.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and I'm sure everybody out there listening, we fight with that all the time. Well, what is the level of persistency you should have? It's just like kind of finding that special girl in your life. It's like when you find it, you don't give up at all. You just go for it 100%.
Well, the question is you should ask yourself is what's the worst that can happen, right?
Right.
Like Dennis, let me try something with you. Ready?
Yes.
Okay. No. Hey, did you just die?
Nope.
Okay, you're still alive, right? Nothing happened, right? I had recently a guy called Anil Gupta on my show. What an incredible guy. The guy plays tennis with Richard Branson. He flies. He hangs out with Mike Tyson.
That'd be a treat.
And I said to him, I said, Anil, how do you do this? And he said to me, well, I just asked. Like I just went up to Richard Branson one day and I said, hey, do you want to knock up? Let's play tennis. And they played. And he shared with me a very powerful story, which illustrates this point. His son was on a flight, and he was sitting in first class. And lo and behold, guess who's sitting a couple of rows up from him? Tony Robbins, right? So Anil's son calls his dad up and goes, Dad, you won't believe who's on my flight and who's sitting just a couple of rows up from me. And he goes, who? He said, it's Tony Robbins, Dad. Tony Robbins, a couple of seats up. And so his father goes, great, go sit next to him. And his son says, Dad, I can't go sit next to Tony. There's someone sitting next to him already. And his dad said, so what? Go up to the guy, tap him on the shoulder and say, excuse me, sir, but I'd love to take your seat. And if you could, trade seats with me because I want to sit next to Tony Robbins, that would be wonderful. And his son said, Dad, there's no way I'm going to do that. That's crazy. He's never going to let me sit there. And he said, son, if you don't ask, you won't know. So go over there, okay, ask the guy if you can trade seats with him. And even if you have to, take your watch off, okay, and offer him your watch. Tell him if you let me sit here, I'll give you my watch. And his watch was obviously a Rolex, a very expensive watch. And he says, okay, Dad, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Puts down the phone, goes over to the guy sitting next to Tony, taps him on the shoulder and says, I'm so sorry to do this, but I really would love to sit next to Tony Robbins. And if you could just let me, trade seats with you. And he takes off his watch. I'll give you my watch. And the guy sort of sits there, looks at him very weirdly, and he goes, do you know what? Put your watch back on. If it means that much to you, you can have my seat. And he ended up sitting with Tony Robbins and having a one-on-one, session in a sense with Tony Robbins because he went and took action. And how many of us would kind of just talk ourselves out of it, right? How many of us would say, no, he wouldn't even speak to me because he's so busy and there's no way the guy would give me his seat and right? We feed ourselves crap. Like, just stop and just do it without thinking about it. Just go and do it. And you'd be surprised at what will happen.
That's just the best editing right there to the show. I feel so resonate with that because it's just ask. It's just ask. That's all it is. I mean, I fight with that myself all the time. I don't know why, insecurities or whatever, but you're right. Once you ask, it's like a no doesn't kill you. And I'm sure listeners out there are feeling the same way. I mean, in fact, they probably question maybe even listening or watching this interview. And then they learned this, what you just taught them to today. And now they probably will take that no and deflate it and go ask somebody and it'll change their life. So you very well have changed somebody's life here today yourself by sharing this.
I hope so.
I hope so too. And
I hope so.
This is awesome, Daniel. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We're way past our time, and I'm sure over there, I don't know, what time is it over there anyway?
8:45 p.m., but it's actually really good, Dennis. I'm so thankful that you've had me on your show because it's actually bedtime when we started. So 4 kids getting put to bed, and I had a perfect excuse to get out of bedtime today. So thank you very much.
Oh, no problem. This has been a great experience here as well for me, and we're certainly gonna have to keep in touch. And I'll listen to a few podcasts of yours, and hopefully you'll listen to a few of mine, and our listeners will listen to both of us, and hopefully learn something and inspire themselves. This is great, and I'm also a special.
I want to leave a.
Go ahead.
I want to leave a challenge actually for the listeners, because I feel like a lot of times you'll listen to a podcast show and you kind of get really inspired and you're like, yes, I'm going to do it. Yes, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And you're like, eh. And then like an hour goes by and you've had your lunch and you're kind of like, back to normal again, right? So I kind of want to give those of you listening or watching this just a small challenge, just to flex your persistent muscles, or your kind of like, go get it muscles, right? Just shoot me an email, like send me an email with something interesting. Try to get my attention. I get a ton of emails, and a lot of them I ignore because they're just bland, and because we spoke about standing out today, and we spoke about just taking action and producing, I want you to take all of those and put them into action. And so I want you to go into your email right now, type in my email address, which is daniel@getfeatured.com. That's daniel@getfeatured.com. And I want you to try and get my attention. It's a little game, okay? Remember we talked about titles and how important the titles are? Make the title meaningful. Make it something that's going to really grab my attention. And then I promise you, the ones that do get my attention, I will respond to, and we'll have a relationship.
I love that. That is awesome. Giving them the chance to go give their watch to Tony Robbins, right? Who knows?
Oh, yeah.
And you might, who knows? You might be a billionaire someday yourself and invest in somebody yourself. Who knows, right? Awesome. Daniel,
from your lips to God's ears.
There you go. Daniel, thank you so much. And also Jeremy Slate, thank you so much for being persistent and offering Daniel to come on my show. And I know you guys are partners, and I hope this venture is very successful, and I'm sure you'll be helping a lot of podcasters out there get guests and all this amazing stuff. So
thank you, Dennis. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah. And thank you, listeners, again for listening to us here for 32 minutes. It's been really great. Hopefully we're giving you real stories from real people, and they're changing the world and giving us some inspiring moments. I think that's happened all here today. And in fact, breakthroughs, and we are entrepreneurs. So all the things got covered that I want to get covered in this podcast. So I'm happy. I've checked my list and I love it. So thank you, Daniel. Again, if you want to give them a website or anything like that, this is your chance to do that. Obviously, you just gave your email.
So in terms of like listening to my show, they can go onto iTunes, or if they're on an Android, they can go on any of the podcast platforms and type in "Can I Pick Your Brain?" and you can listen to some of my guests on there. Or if you go to danielgefen.com, that's 1F, danielgefen.com. You can also check me out there, and always happy to reach out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So Facebook is Daniel Gefen, and then Twitter and Instagram is @ipickbrains. That's @ipickbrains. And of course, if you want to get featured on top podcast shows like this one, then you just go to getfeatured.com. And also for your listeners, I want to give them a special discount. So if they do sign up with any of the packages we have on there, for your listeners, they can get a 50% discount. That's half price.
Wow.
And all they need to do is say that they came from the 5 Minute Bark, and we'll honor that 50% discount.
Thank you, Daniel. That's awesome. See, now that's all I can ask for, right? That's awesome. All right, listeners, and Daniel, thank you for coming out and spending some time with us here today. Until next time on the 5 Minute Bark Podcast. Woohoo! You're watching the 5 Minute Bark Podcast on YouTube. If you like this episode, you just may like many more. Subscribe today by clicking the red subscribe button in the top right-hand corner.